of colical pains. So my whole, I was really, really sick. In 2 weeks, I lost 10 pounds. So our next step was to go to the primary doctor. When you visit your primary doctor, you hope that they will have some idea or clue of what's going on with you by telling the symptoms. But when my primary doctor sat down at her desk, looked at the chart, looked at me, looked at the chart, scratched her head, didn't get that hopeful feeling that she knew what was going on with me. And then she proceeded to ask me if I was pregnant. And maybe those were the symptoms I was having. So since I have been pregnant before, this is my my testimony here. I knew that wasn't it. It was something else. So she hospitalized me, put me in the hospital, and said that I was going to have a hospital doctor who would see me. So which he did. He checked me out and sent me home the next day because he didn't know what was going on with me either. But all the symptoms continue on. So after many doctors, it's going from one doctor to another doctor, being referred to specialists, had many, many tests, upper and lower, GIs, and lab tests, blood tests. There was still no answer about what was going on. The doctors couldn't have an idea how to diagnose me. And one specialist said to me, you know, you just don't have to think about it. Just go home and just eat whatever you like. Just do not eat or drink milk. Stay away from lactose. But I think you'll be okay. In other words, he was saying my pain, my losing weight, and everything else was in my head, but it wasn't really happening to me. So I couldn't go home and do what he said because I know that I would have suffered. The way I was feeling was that I couldn't even drink water because the water will sit in my stomach and it will feel like I had rocks in my stomach, which initiated colical pains and discomfort because I wasn't passing or digesting something so easy to digest, which is water, right? During that time, God showed me that I was putting my faith in the hope. I was putting my faith and my hope in people. First, it was my sister Imelda, the natural remedies. Then was my primary doctor. Then was the hospital doctor. And then after that was all the specialists. And everything, all my hope that I was putting in those people seemed to be just hitting a wall and bouncing back to me and saying, Ana, your faith should be in God, not in the people or the tools that people have to make you better. That was the first hard lesson I had during this experience. And I just want to tell you that God is so good that He uses our bad experiences that we go in life for us to open our hearts. Sometimes we're vulnerable and down. It's the only time where He really open our heart to Him and make decisions that will change our salvation, will change our life. And I was going through this experience, and so my first lesson was, where is my faith? Where I am putting my faith? And when things were turning back to me, not in a positive way, I started realizing where I was putting my faith in. So after 2 months into this illness, flat in bed, I couldn't do much. By now, I have chronic fatigue. I don't know if anyone had experienced that. It's horrible. You have no energy at all. Not to even lift up the spoon and put food in my mouth was a hard work. So I wasn't able to eat, plus I was not able to digest any food that I had. And during that time, the enemy, I was vulnerable, and he came and attacked with thoughts of doubt of who God is. His thoughts were, well, if God loves you, how come you're not healed? Well, if God heals other people, why can't he heal you? Does he really loves you? And as I was really having a hard time just to stay, every day when I woke up, I thought it would be better than the day before, and it wasn't. It was worse than the day before. And I literally could see myself shrinking. I had never been big, and for me to lose all that weight rapidly, it was not very good. So I had to angels through all this experience, because what happened out of the experience of Satan putting all those thoughts in my mind, I went into depression. And my two angels were my mother and my sister Imelda. My mother was living with me, and so she every time I was into depression, she would come and pray with me. And her prayers lift me up for an hour, 2 hours sometimes. But then again, I was back into the depression, and she will pray. So every time that happened, she will be with me and praying. And that was the only way it will take me out from the depression. And Imelda will come, and I will say to her, I don't feel that God is with me. I want to feel that He is with me, that I have the fuzzy feeling of knowing that things are going to get better, but I don't feel that. I feel that I'm in the dark. And she would say, Anna, remember that faith is about believing, not about feelings, not about you feeling that God is there, but about knowing that God is there. And it was so hard for me to understand that, because when you are truly walking to a trial and tribulation, you don't have the energy, first of all, and you being attacked by the devil, and you want to feel something, and something that's, you could say, yes, I know God is with me, and I wasn't feeling that. And so she kept repeating that, and I kept saying to her, yeah, it's easy for you to say that, because you are not the one laying here. I am the one who's going through this. But God was so patient with me, and He continued on being there for me, even though I wasn't really feeling it. I had such anxiety, it's a fear of dying. Arlette was 17 years old, and I was afraid of dying and leave her behind. And I couldn't bear the thought of her not having a mother. And so I had such a fear of dying, and I had anxiety attacks because of that. So I was experiencing a lot of emotional, physical, and spiritual problems at the same time. And that's normally how it is, right, when we go to these problems. I was referred to other doctors. Like I mentioned, I had so many tests done before. But this one doctor had a better idea than others. He prescribed a stool complete panel to find out if I had an autoimmune disease. And he wanted to know if I had either Crohn's disease, lupus, or HIV. If you know anything about these three illnesses, none of them are good. And none of them have solutions either, according to the medical field. So but we all prayed that this test was going to be something that it will show us something that we could use to, to get better. And it was the time to go back to the doctor to get the results. And I was very hopeful that he will have an answer for us. So when we talked to him, he said, well, Anna, I have a good news and bad news for you. I'm going to give you the bad news first, the good news first. And he said, the good news is all the tests came back negative. You don't have any of those diseases. The bad news is that we don't know why you're still losing weight. We don't know why you're still in a lot of pain. We don't know why you have chronic fatigue. We don't know why your illness comes from. So I can't diagnose you with anything. I cannot give you one pill, not even for your pain, because we don't know where it's coming from. So he sent me home. I had never experienced in my whole life anger against God until that day. I was so angry that God had not answered my prayers. Many people were praying also for this, to have some kind of idea what was going on in my body. And I went home, and I cried, and I cried, and I cried all that night. And I think it was around midnight. I think God was letting me just let it all out. And around midnight, late at night, something went on. Have you seen the reaction of, I could have had a V8 commercial? That was kind of like the reaction, like someone clicked me on the head and said, God has answered your prayer. And he showed me the reason of my anxiety. He showed me the reason of my fears. He showed me where my heart was rooted in. Even my unselfish love for my daughter, because he loved my daughter more than I do, or I didn't at that point. And he knew that she was going to be taking care of it. She was not going to lack of anything if I would die. But I didn't know that. See, I didn't have that trust in him. And so he showed me the roots of my heart. And then he showed me that I was not 100% committed to him, that there were things in my life that I was still hanging on to it, and that I hadn't surrendered to him. And at that point, I asked forgiveness for my lack of faith. I asked forgiveness for not surrendering to him 100%. And I made a decision. And my decision was that either I was alive or dead, that the only thing I wanted to be was with him. I also understood the fact that his will is not always our will. Our will is very selfish. We ask God for things according to what we want, right? And that night, I really understood, it is my will to live. It is my will not to die. But I have to surrender that to God. I have to surrender my will to him. And so if it is God's will that I will be dead, it's fine with me because I only want to be with him. That is all I want. And at that point, when I made that decision, things changed in my mind. The next morning, I still was sick. I was still losing weight. I still had pain. Nothing around me on the outside had changed. But it had changed in my mind and in my heart. The priorities on how I saw my illness, the way how I tolerated pain, my tolerance for pain is 0. Pain is not my friend. I do not like pain. And the way I was, you know, I still have pains, but the way I was dealing with the pain was different. I didn't know what was going to happen. I did not know at the point if I was going to die, but I was at peace in my heart with that. Right after that, my sister from Los Angeles came to visit me. And she's a nurse, and she could not understand how all these doctors, 7 doctors that I went through, no one had a clue and idea what my illness was. So she started calling all the health stores here in town in Sacramento, asking for a homeopathic doctor or someone who knew about natural remedies. And they recommended him a man in Santa Rosa, Cliff Wells. He was a nutritionist. And she said, here's the information, make an appointment and, see what happens. And we did. We made an appointment, and I wasn't too excited about driving how many hours to Santa Rosa? 4 or 5 hours? 4 hours? So I wasn't really excited because I was very weak. But we went. And to my surprise, which was a nice surprise this time, this man, I know God had put him in, at that point I did not know that God had put him in my path, but after my first visit with him, without giving him much information, a lot less information that I had been giving all the doctors, and they did not know what I had, he pretty much knew why I had the condition I had. And he said, he's starting to tell me all these laws of health that I known growing up in the church, but I have forgotten them to practice them. And he said, number 1, you are a workaholic. And he wasn't far from that, true. He said, number 2, you don't know how to release the stress. I tell you the truth, I never considered stress to be a problem until I went through that experience. And number 3, he said, you don't exercise, you don't drink water, you don't eat right. He said your diet is horribly acidic. He said, I've never seen anyone with such an acidic diet. And he said, you don't go out when the sun. You don't get some sunlight. And all the things that he said, they were all true. I went to work early. I didn't come home until 7 to 8 o'clock. I was so determined to do a very good job. I was not eating properly. I was not drinking water. I was not taking breaks during my time at work. I was under a lot of stress because I was working with a lot of people that, had higher classifications at work. And so I was breaking all the rules that he was talking about. He said, if you do the diet that I'm going to give you, you will be calling me in 3 months and telling me Muchas gracias, Cliff. And he said, first thing I want to do is alkaline your system. Your body is so acidic, and we need to alkaline your system. And at the time, we didn't know about fancy machines. You know, some of you may know how to alkaline the water. But he gave me a recipe to do that. He said, buy 3 gallons, and I had to do this diet for 3 days. And I just want to tell you that before I went into this diet, I couldn't even drink water, right? Because I couldn't even eat. Nothing was being assimilated in my system at all. He said, 1 gallon of distilled water and all kinds of different vegetables, whatever you like, carrots, bell peppers, lettuce, anything that you want to put in that water. And let us sit all night. And in the morning, you drain the water, put it back into the gallon of the water where you pour it out, and you drink the water. So 3 days. He said, I was dying from the inside out. In our intestines, we have some, they're kind of finger-looking nerve cells. It's called villi. And those little finger-looking things make, in the lower intestine, make our food that comes from the stomach into the intestine move along. And as it moves along the lower intestine, is being digestive. And all the nutrients of the food is being absorbed by the body. And my system was at halt at that time. Nothing was being assimilated from my stomach into the lower intestine. And that's why I was having all these different symptoms, because my body was pretty much off. Somebody turned off the lights and said, the party is over for you, Missy. And so he said, we need to change that. And that was caused by the acidity that you have in your system. So he put me on that diet. At the end of the 3 days, I was able to eat baked potatoes. No butter, no sour cream. Just salads. Bell peppers are very hard to digest. Cucumbers are very hard to digest. But I was able to eat all that. It was just amazing. He gave me minerals and also vitamins to take. Brew yeast to put on freshly juices. So at the end of, this is almost at the end of my 3rd month when I started this diet. In a month, I was back to work. Not a full-time, but part-time. And I was still experiencing some of the pain. But I just want to say, after the visit with this nutritionist, just to make it back a little bit, while I was visiting with him, I was feeling nauseated and having a whole bunch of, not feeling very well. And I expressed that to him, and he said to me, let me go to my kitchen, and because he had his office at his house, and prepare you a juice. And I'm thinking, a juice? Really? I can't even drink water without having, such more pain? But he came back with this juice and gave me 2 minerals, zinc and magnesium. And he said, drink it, you will feel better. And I did. My stomach settled after that. And he sat on his piano and played music for me while I was drinking my juice. And the ride back home was so amazing for me because I knew that God's will for me was for me to be alive. and that he had placed this man in my path to get me back into restoration. And so after, following all the stuff that he gave me, I was able to get back to a point where I was telling you I was able to go back to work part-time. It took me a couple years to get back to where I feel normal again. But what I learned through this experience is that God never leaves us. God is always there with us. And that when we make decisions in our life to serve Him, if it is His will, He will give us what we want, As a result of this illness, my relationship with my husband grew because he was so patient. He never complained about things not being done or taken care of. At the end of my illness, I had lost 38 pounds. I was pretty much skin and bones. And he never said, "You look horrible." He never said anything negative to me. And that was so valuable to me. At the end, I was just so grateful to have someone, that would appreciate me no matter how I looked and my words. And my relationship with my sister is strengthened also. My relationship with my mother, who was there, always there for me. So there was a blessing all around, And I also realized that God's mission is for our soul to be saved. This physical body, He will give us a new one. But our soul is more important. So if I would have died then, it would have been okay. Because I would have been resting, waiting for God to come. Because I did give my life to Him. And I wanted to be with Him. So the rest of the days I have on this earth, I am so thankful to Him that He's so good to us. And I want to serve Him. I want to glorify His name for every day I live. And serve Him, here at church or anywhere. Because if it wasn't for Him, I wouldn't have salvation. And if it wasn't for Him, I would not have what I have now. I was able to see my daughter get married. I'm able to enjoy my grandchildren and her family. And so I am blessed. He's giving me way more than probably I deserve. So I praise God for He being my salvation.